It's really a pleasure to be here, to be back in New York City, to see old friends and colleagues from my days when I did serve here as New York City's health commissioner, and I'm excited by the opportunity to make some new friends as we continue forward in this important partnership together. And I must say, Congressman Meeks, thank you for that lovely introduction. I can understand why you won with such a large margin last night. You are articulate, charismatic, you do your homework, and I must say you know how to flatter a person too. But I always do enjoy visiting academic institutions like this one and having a chance to talk with students and professors. And today's visit is a particular treat for me, given the special and important relationship between York College and the FDA. For the past 10 years, and this is an important anniversary, you have hosted our scientists and our research here on your campus. And since then, people have flowed freely between the FDA and York. As you've heard, college students have interned in our labs, and FDA scientists have taught at the college, and we've done workshops and seminars and professional development activities together. It is a unique and true partnership, and there's much we can still learn from each other and much that we should do together going forward. I know that a number of people here have been absolutely instrumental, playing pivotal roles in bringing our agency to this campus. So thank you, especially to the former borough president and former Congressman Flake. And of course, this partnership is really a testament to their excellent foresight, and I think we're all the better for it. And I think that in many ways, today represents a renewal of our commitment to strengthen this important partnership and really build it going forward. I'm also excited by the fact that as we sit here today, there's, as I understand it, a 3-day workshop of top scientists meeting here from around the country, working on a very important set of issues for the health of our nation. And I know that there will be many interesting and productive conversations and ideas emerging from that meeting. I certainly hope that it will be just number 9, and I think someone said in a series that will continue to go on into very large numbers, because that's just exactly the kind of activity that's so important to supporting the work of the FDA, to building the knowledge base that's so important to the ongoing science here at York College, and most importantly, so important for informing science-driven decision-making by policymakers at the FDA and beyond. So this kind of dynamic activity is extremely heartening to me, because I do believe very strongly in the importance of the intersection between scientists of all stripes, government scientists, academic scientists, and very significantly the world of academia. We can offer a great deal to one another, and together we can provide tremendous leadership to the larger scientific community. This morning I'd like to talk a little bit about my work at the FDA and some of the critical challenges in science and public health that my agency and your institution are currently working to address together. And I'm certain that some of these challenges may sound very familiar to my colleagues who are here from the Northeast Regional Office today, and I really must thank all of them for their outstanding and very dedicated work every day. It's been more than a year since I began this job, and the learning curve has indeed been steep. And I can admit now that before I took this job, I really did not fully appreciate how crucial and unique the FDA really is. It is much more than an important regulatory agency. It's an essential public health agency an agency uniquely positioned to take science-based, data-driven action on behalf of the American people and hopefully beyond. And it is an agency whose work affects all our lives in intimate and important ways. The FDA regulates products that account for somewhere between 20 and 25% of every consumer dollar spent in this country. Foods, drugs, medical devices, vaccines and biologics, cosmetics, dietary supplements, animal drugs and food, certain products that emit radiation, and now, for the first time in FDA's history, tobacco products as well. In other words, our responsibility and reach is enormous. With the notable exception of tobacco, these are products that Americans really need, products we care about, and products that matter in a most fundamental way to our health, safety, and well-being. All aspects of our mission are crucial to the health of individuals and populations, and science is the key factor that cuts across and unites all of our varied activities and responsibilities. And so it should be. If FDA does not do its job and do it completely and responsibly, there is really no one to backstop behind us. This would be a daunting task under any circumstances, but this is a particularly challenging time with powerful new forces shaping our modern world. First, we're seeing tremendous breakthroughs in science and technology, an explosion of knowledge and capabilities from many fields of research. But do any of us believe that we have adequately delivered on the opportunities of science today? I don't think so. And I believe that success will demand that we assure a regulatory process that is adequate and appropriate to harness these opportunities to improve health, prevent disease, and offer patients the treatments and cures that they need. In addition, we live in an increasingly globalized world, one with an international scientific enterprise where everything from clinical trials to the manufacturing of drugs and medical products takes place all over the world. And this makes our work truly a global endeavor, with the need for international collaboration, information sharing, and harmonization of standards across borders, time zones, and cultures, as well as a sustained, comprehensive approach to ensuring the safety of food, drugs, and other FDA-regulated products that must navigate the complex supply chain and persist throughout the life cycle of those products. So clearly, the job of empowering the FDA to fulfill its mission today is a fundamentally different and far more complex proposition than it was even a few years ago. A chief priority for me as Commissioner must be to accelerate the transformation of the FDA into a regulatory agency fully capable of promoting and protecting the health of the American people in the 21st century. But most importantly, my priority is to ensure that the FDA is an agency that the American people can trust. Of course, doing so effectively requires a clear set of principles, a guiding force, and for me, that force is public health. Both consumers and industry groups have a tremendous stake in a strong FDA that takes science-based action on behalf of public health, actions that are transparent and can inspire confidence in the public whose health we're trying to protect. And that's why we've pushed forward with a public health agenda for the agency. As a public health agency, we must prevent problems before they occur, focus on outcomes for individuals, but also for populations, balance risks and benefits, use data for decision-making, address unmet public health needs, and prioritize partnerships and multidisciplinary approaches to find meaningful and sustainable solutions to the complex challenges before us. So this is the spirit in which I lead the FDA, and it's the spirit that I believe we must bring to the unique challenges before us, challenges shaped by the realities of our modern world. So let me briefly talk about a couple of important issues that I think are of mutual interest and concern, issues that really matter to the people of this country and beyond, and issues that I think are at the heart of the opportunities for our important collaboration between the FDA and York College. These are drug development and regulation issues, import safety, food safety and nutrition, and tobacco. Let me begin with drug development, and an issue that has become very close to my heart in the past year as I've served as commissioner, and that issue is regulatory science, which I think more and more people are recognizing as critical to progress for patients. We live in a time of huge opportunities to improve health. Massive public and private investments have been made in biomedical research to the tune of tens of billions of dollars a year in recent times. This effort is clearly imperative for medical progress, and we've witnessed the resultant discoveries that hold such promise for therapeutic advance in fields as diverse as genomics, synthetic biology, stem cells, and nanotechnology. But right now, truthfully, we're failing to effectively translate breakthrough discoveries and innovation into benefits for people, enabling us to better diagnose, treat, and hopefully prevent and cure disease. In fact, the number of new therapies is actually in the decline, while the costs of developing them and bringing them to market is actually soaring. To put it simply, there's a troubling gap between advances in science and patient care, and we need to close that gap, and we can. But to do so, in my view, will require the advancement and more effective application of regulatory science, the science and tools needed to assess and evaluate a product's safety, efficacy, quality, and performance. It involves the development of new methods, standards, and models that we can use to speed the development, review, approval, and oversight of medical and other products. A bench scientist may develop a new approach to a disease. A clinician may be able to show that it can work, but regulatory scientists must help develop the knowledge and tools to translate discovery and innovation into those products that hold so much progress. We cannot take advantage of the breakneck speed of biomedical research unless we also emphasize innovation in regulatory science. Just as biomedical research has evolved over the past few decades, regulatory science, which is an important component of biomedical research, must also evolve in important and powerful ways. Regulatory science is an essential part of the overall scientific enterprise, yet it's been underappreciated, underfunded, and underdeveloped. Because of this, we've been unable to apply the best possible science and technology to the tasks before us, and we're left relying on 20th century approaches for the review, approval, and oversight of the treatments and cures of the 21st century. So now is the time to move forward. Without advances in regulatory science, promising therapies may be discarded during development because we lack the tools to recognize their potential, or because outdated, inefficient review methods unnecessarily delay the approval of critical treatments. On the other hand, both significant dollars and many years may be wasted assessing a novel therapy that with better tools might be shown to be unsafe or ineffective at an earlier stage. Let me give you some other examples of why regulatory science matters. Before Parkinson's disease patients can benefit from promising stem cell therapies to restore brain function, we must develop scientifically valid standards and manufacturing processes to ensure that the therapies are produced reliably and safely. Before we can usher in the era of personalized medicine, we need new science to identify genetic markers and subpopulations for treatment, and we must evaluate and approve the use of new diagnostic tests in that context. And hearkening back to a subject of great interest to me when I was here in New York City, if we are really going to effectively deal with the problem of tuberculosis, especially drug-resistant tuberculosis, we need combination drug therapies, and we need to develop a new pathway to evaluate new drugs in combination earlier in the process rather than studying each one alone first and then studying them together, which, as you can imagine, takes many, many years. I could give a lot of other examples, but I won't because of time. But I see regulatory science as the critical bridge between scientific discovery and opportunity and our ability to offer patients the best possible care. I also see it as an area that is ripe for future collaboration in terms of the strengths of your college and the interests of the students and faculty and the pressing needs of our nation moving forward. Advancing the field of regulatory science is one of my main priorities as commissioner, and through FDA's new regulatory science initiative, we are working with partners to make our goals a reality. A large focus of our work, in fact, is to mobilize external collaborations and partnerships, particularly with academia, and support studies in major regulatory science research areas. In fact, resources willing, we will continue to make strategic targeted investments in areas that support our regulatory science plan, and we hope to expand these activities in the next few years to establish centers of excellence in regulatory science funded by FDA and focused on targeted, collaborative, multidisciplinary, and multisectoral research activities, most likely housed in academic settings. And I should mention that I've focused mainly on regulatory science as it relates to drug development, but it's also critically important to strengthening food safety. Let me shift gears a little bit and just talk quickly about another important area of focus, one that's particularly relevant in this region because it's located so close to JFK, which represents a major port of entry for a range of imported goods regulated by the FDA. And so what I want to talk about now is, of course, import safety. As you know, the world in which the products we regulate are discovered, developed, and marketed is effectively getting smaller and smaller. When we first began as the FDA back in 1906, imports were just a tiny part of the products used in our country. But in 2010, it's a different story altogether. Consider that almost 80% of seafood and 40% of fresh fruit and produce eaten in this country actually comes from outside our borders. About 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in drugs used in this country today come from outside our borders. And as much as 80% of all aspirin taken in the United States comes from China alone, as I understand it. So what we as Americans consider to be our domestic products, in reality, are global commodities. And it means that we have to think very differently about our job and about our world. It means that we must extend our reach. Certainly, this means finding more sophisticated strategies for intercepting problems at the border. And we're doing that here at JFK and at other ports of entry. But even under the best of circumstances, that approach is limited, especially when you think about the vast number of products coming in through hundreds of points of entry around the country. FDA simply does not have and never will have the resources to inspect every shipment of products from overseas, nor can we inspect every foreign manufacturer. The new global reality requires new global partnerships, and this is a challenge that we share with virtually all nations. So we'll work closely with our sister regulatory authorities around the world, and with international and national organizations, and with industry. We'll find new ways to share information and approaches, and we will learn step by step to leverage international resources to help accomplish FDA's domestic mission. I want to say just a word about food safety. This has been a major focus of renewed activity for the administration and for the FDA, and I understand it's an important area of focus in some of the projects that we're doing here in our FDA York College collaboration. Whether imported or homegrown, we are really working hard to improve the safety of the food that you all put on your tables every day. We're working to transform our systems for addressing food safety issues and shift from a model where we scramble after an outbreak of foodborne disease occurs to a model that embraces the public health notion of prevention. And we're working closely with our partners at the state and local level and internationally to try to develop an integrated system of food safety. And we also are trying very hard to develop and implement the kinds of opportunities in science, some of what I talked about with respect to the need to strengthen regulatory science, to apply to our work in food safety, to reduce foodborne disease, to improve the quality of food processing, and to give us critical tools such as on-site rapid diagnostic tests for various food contaminants so that we can quickly and surely identify problems and address them in a timely way that saves lives, saves illness and disability, and also, at the end of the day, saves money. I also want to mention just quickly that we're also working very hard to help Americans improve their nutritional choices, to make better choices so that we can reduce the heavy burden of preventable disease, disability, and death related to chronic disease, including obesity, that has really become a defining public health issue of our time. Certainly the fight against obesity and diet-related chronic disease is one of this administration's top priorities. I'm sure you've all heard our First Lady talk about Let's Move, her campaign to reduce childhood obesity. And this arena is a top priority of FDA as well. Most of our efforts in this arena have to do with providing accurate and accessible information to consumers on the front of the pack of various food products. We're working now with our partners in industry and in public health and consumer groups to try to see if we can develop a system to put information out there that's easy to understand, that's science-based, and can help all of us with our busy lives quickly make good food choices. You also are probably all familiar with the nutrition facts panel on the back of food packages, which has been there for a while now, and the FDA is responsible for that, and we're now updating it in important ways to reflect advances in scientific understanding and new realities about the environment in which we live. You know, for example, the serving sizes you may notice are not really reflective of how people eat. I think 8 potato chips may be the average serving size indicated, and I know few people that have such restraint. So we're going to be updating that information, and hopefully all of us can improve our dietary choices as a result. Also, as a part of healthcare reform, it may surprise some of you to know there was a requirement to introduce menu labeling in restaurants. And again, this is an FDA responsibility. This has to do with chain restaurants of 20 restaurants or more, and also vending machines, if a company has 20 vending machines or more, so that very soon you'll start to see postings of calorie information with additional nutritional information available on request as part of that effort. We hope that by providing calorie information on menu boards, in addition to labeling on front of packages and the updating of the back of the pack food nutrition label, and also the implementation of other initiatives, potentially including efforts to reduce sodium and trans fat consumption, healthy decision-making will become a part of the daily lifestyle for all of us and for all Americans. We're taking a similar public health approach to our new charge for regulating tobacco, which remains a leading preventable cause of death in this country. Last year, President Obama signed the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act, a historic piece of legislation that for the first time gave the FDA the explicit and broad authority to regulate tobacco products and practices of the tobacco industry. Now, FDA has authority over the manufacture, marketing, distribution, sale, and importation of tobacco products, along with the flexibility to monitor and respond to new information and developments. For the first time, we can require companies to reveal certain ingredients in tobacco products, including the amount of nicotine, and we can cause them to comply with a ban on fruit and candy-flavored cigarettes, which are particularly pernicious in recruiting young smokers to a potential lifetime of addiction. And also, there'll be an upcoming ban on the sale of tobacco products marketed as light, mild, or low, unless such marketing has been approved by the FDA on the basis of scientific evidence demonstrating that, in fact, those reduced risk claims are true. So this broad new authority is very important. Our goal is to use the law's power to substantially improve the health of the American people and to save lives. This, after all, is the fundamental mission of the FDA, to promote and protect the health of the public. And while this is not an easy task, it is one that employees at every level of FDA really embrace and share and are committed to. So I think it's time to close. I think I've said too much already, but it's hard to get started talking about FDA with its broad scope and important set of activities without talking for a while. But let me close by just saying how important, how critical to our important mission is the work of partnerships and collaborations. And the partnership with York College is one that I think was a brilliant idea. It has moved forward in important and productive ways. I think in recent years, under the leadership of President Keyes and with the support of the leadership of CUNY and the political infrastructure of this area, we are really prepared to take it now to the next level, and I look forward to working with you on those activities. And thank you for your time and attention. Is there time?
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you so much for that very thoughtful, our very own York College faculty member.
I have a chance to ask you questions later, but today's talk was telecast through the internet through specific people who access a certain URL. In fact, Mr. George Boone, who was the former director of the NRL, who signed on the MOU with York College from his retirement in Florida, is logged in and listening to this. And back in Claremont Colleges, in a new institute, when I was hired from industry, I started a course on regulatory science, and I asked the 25 students taking that track this year to show up at school at 7 a.m. in the morning and listen to it. So they are listening. And by power of the email, the question just came in from Professor Gail Bora, with whom I started this. The question is, how would you encourage students who are interested in medical device regulatory affairs about learning about FDA during their studies?
Well, I think that at the undergraduate level, it would be sort of a sophisticated area of interest, I must say, but I think that the opportunity to engage in coursework, such as you're describing, is not universal. Some institutions may have that early opportunity, but I think it's relatively rare. I think that at the present time, you know, the fact is that we're not reaching down as we should be to identify these issues and potential career opportunities for students at the undergraduate level, and I think we need to be doing a better job. For someone who's motivated and directed, there's of course information available on our website, and for those who are really motivated and directed, there are opportunities for internships at the FDA in the device area. But one of the things that, you know, would be interesting to explore here, and perhaps develop some approaches that could be expanded to other college settings would be how can we develop programs and curricula to begin to introduce students at an earlier age to some of these interesting areas. And I really do think that regulatory science is a very exciting career path that, like the field of regulatory science more broadly, is critically important but has been underdeveloped. And really a focus on regulatory science in the undergraduate years can lead in many different directions. It can lead to work in academia, in industry, in government. It can lead to careers that are, truly in the research community or move you into policy and public health. But I would love to really delve more deeply into that question and see how we can more aggressively, in fact, build up opportunities that I think are presently limited.
And in listening to you, clearly partnership is an important thing. And as a scientist, one thing came to mind. I wonder if there's any consideration as to how one might actually manage drugs or toxicants and pollutants that may be byproducts of drug use that may end up in water supplies. Has one considered how the FDA might be involved in that? It seems as though that might be a purview of the EPA, but nonetheless, it's related to drug use and regulation.
Well, I think, that as you point out, those issues of environmental contamination do fall more into the bailiwick of EPA, but it's a continuum of concerns, and what happens in one agency's domain can influence another's, and the understanding of the implications of certain findings in the environment for human health may bring it back full circle into our arena as well. So it's very, very important that there be work across governmental agencies. Very often, as I'm sure you recognize, we are sort of artificially stovepiped by history and by practice, and the problems that come before us don't fit those stovepipes, and so meaningful solutions have to find a way to break out of those stovepipes. I would also say, not exactly the question you asked, but very important within the domain of FDA, that we need to have more focus and do more work that relates to the human effects of environmental exposures and toxicology more broadly. And again, thinking about where a place like York College can make some important and somewhat unique contributions. The area of toxicology, I think, is really underdeveloped, and that we're going to see in our complex world many more issues, questions, and concerns around environmental exposures and toxins and human health and environmental risk issues. And I think that, it is a wonderful area for students to engage in early and develop careers. And it's enormously important to the work of FDA, EPA, and other agencies going forward, and, ultimately to the health of people in this country and people around the world. So it's another interesting area to explore.
One last question.
First of all, thank you for coming, Dr. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the address. I think our concern is centered around the specificity of how your college and FDA are able to better create an environment where those that you talked about, the regulatory process, does that fit here? Is that a good fit for us, the toxicology process? What processes can we have probably Congressman Meek work with you on and the President to see how we make sure that we have an ongoing process by which we assure the FDA here is doing the kind of work that informs what you are doing and helps to build it up so that with our location near the airport, we become kind of a center that is able to distribute from this place those things that you need to do your job better. And I think that if that happens, it means that more students, more engagement on the part of faculty, more engagement in internships becomes a reality, and we can build up the institution, both institutions, by having them co-joined in a way that produces products that is so necessary that we don't have to worry about this center ever losing its standing.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I think that, you know, your question lays the foundation for a set of discussions that we need to have. You know, my sense is that the foundation has been laid and that we have a number of important projects that are working well, and some shared training activities and seminars and the internship and the faculty exchange, but that there's much, much more that we can build out. And I think, you know, my coming here today will help start some important conversations at the highest level, but I also think that on the lab to your college level, it's going to be very, very key to continue to really actively ask the question of where are the opportunities for synergy. What are the ways in which the relationship with York College can have unique value added for FDA, and where we can make an investment in York College, perhaps in terms of real money, but also in terms of bringing scientific expertise and perspective and career opportunities to really develop an exciting and I think, you know, really could be a program of national interest and stature. The unique intersection of our laboratory and JFK and the important work that happens there, you know, certainly creates one major opportunity in terms of thinking about safety and screening and regulatory oversight in a globalized world. I also think opportunities to develop the regulatory science agenda are very, very ripe for action, because the laboratory, I think, is and I hope will continue to be involved in helping think about how do we harness advances in science and technology to develop the new tools that we need to do our job better. And that's a very exciting process, and it's very science-rich, and, you know, wonderful opportunities for intellectual collaboration between York faculty and our scientists, and wonderful opportunities for exposure by students. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Dr. Hamburg, I'm not going to ask a question. If you could appoint somebody that would be devoted to your college and Dr. Keyes so that we could actively discuss the future between your agency and the school, would you do that?
You know, it makes sense to me. I am looking to some of our folks from the lab, but I think, you know, I understand that, in fact, there's a liaison from your college to FDA. It seems like parity would you know, require that we do the same. So you know, it makes complete sense to me. I see no reason why we wouldn't. But you know, before I make an absolute commitment, I have a responsibility to actually talk to the people that would be involved. But I think that their presence here today and their presence on your college campus and the collaborative activities that are ongoing, you speak to the commitment that exists.
So thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you so much.